Of course, you do a little research on the net. Don't read books anymore. And I found a recent story written by a colleague of mine just on this topic. And the story starts like this. It's obvious that the boundaries of journalism should be stretched to make room for new media. But how far should we go, indeed? This story was posted on an interesting group blog called The New Reporter, which is in English almost the same, The New Reporter. And it's a blog devoted to the debate on journalism in this age, the ethics, but also the technology. It was an interesting article, but what I found even more interesting was the debate that followed. First was Wim. I would like to see a distinction between real journalists and pseudo-journalists. A little bit old school debate this. But then came the attack. Albert, journalists are ego trippers who look down upon civilians. The blogging civilian is the watchdog of journalism. True. But then came the counterattack. Not by Wim, he left, but by Werner. Man, fuck off. The blogging quarrelmonger has the same characteristics as an intestinal parasite. Its message stinks and becomes washy. Werner is by no means a blogging quarrelmonger himself, of course. But Albert is not taken aback. Gosh, Werner, did I touch a nerve? You must be a journalist, and therefore you have proven my point. Touché. But Werner, has he got any arguments? You are moving into a field full of shit, Albert, and believe me, you don't have the right shoes for it. Nicely put, but where's the content? And then Leah steps in. She wants a real debate. I mean, remember, this is a professional group blog. This is where scholars, academics, journalists, editors, people who take a large interest in the future of media meet. So, Albert, please, I don't quite understand what you're saying. But Albert is still fighting with Werner. Valium might help, Werner. Apparently you're so busy acting like a journalist that you don't see the truth anymore. And not meaning the distorted truths the media present to us every day. Aha. But Werner doesn't give up yet. You have no sense of humor, Albert, and you nag for someone with a message. That's unforgivable. Leah steps in again. Werner, do you think your remarks give Albert any insight in his own attitude? You're pushing him into a corner, and it only encourages him to behave like this. It sounds like the therapist I never had. But Albert is still moaning. Am I not entitled to have an opinion that deviates from the common classical traditional opinion of the media establishment? Are you so fucked up because you're a part of it? Werner leaves. Albert has won. And you know what prize the winner gets? He gets the girl. So he goes on with Leah. Hi Leah, to get back to your question. So these are actual quotes from the debate. And well, some of it might be recognizable for you. But it's when you run this nice little newspaper of high quality and you have all these standards, you find yourself sometimes wondering what's happening on your website. There's this thing about interactivity, which actually means you run an open sewer system. The readers or your audience, you don't want to call you your audience, but the people who visit your site are using it to throw all their garbage through your lines. 24/7 is paramount. We've heard it these last days. You have to be there right now. But what does it mean when you don't have the resources to verify, to select, to think? It can mean you're about as reliable as the next blogger. Or if you're not, if you want to think, if you want to take the time, you will be perceived to be about as slow as the postman. And this amazing World Wide Web, what does it mean to your little paper somewhere out there? It can mean you're hosting a clash of civilizations. And with the linking, the beheading of a hostage, or some child porn, maybe just one click away, etc., etc. I'm not even touching the subject of the division between editorial and commercial content. So, is this the price you have to pay to survive? Is this inevitable? Is it true that you first have to worry about grabbing as much traffic as you can and forget about all the old standards. Erst kommt das Fressen, and later on we will see what boundaries we find and which boundaries are made for us. Dan komt die moraal. Ethics to me is not something written in a book, or especially not something written for you in a book by lawmakers. Ethics, first and foremost, to me, means that you're prepared in your newsroom and with your audience, and that's maybe new, to debate your choices, to open up. And for that you need a newsroom where people feel secure, where they can talk about their choices and also about their mistakes. And you need to have an interactivity with your audience that is profound, not shallow. So, questions. That's all I can offer you today. You should start maybe with some questions. Why are you online anyway? It's not a question people seem to ask here these days, but it can help you to pinpoint your choices. What makes you different in print and online? What makes you unique? And who, especially, do you want to reach? Do you want to be everything for everyone? Or are you targeted to a group? It's very important, I think, for the next questions. Somewhere in your drawer there might be a mission statement, and if not, you can think up one for yourself. You can use it because from that derives the values, and you should point down the values that are most important to you. And secondly and thirdly, you have to ask yourself, how far do you want to stretch? Do you want to be the editor of a nice, chic, elite paper with high standards for a graying audience, and at the same time run a sort of yellow press-like online site? Can you do that? And to some people it looks like ethics online is like it has to battle with nature forces. You cannot win it. You have to go with the flow. But there are tools. There are tools. And I think it was interesting to note the debate on Pointer.org, where they put in a lot of effort to make clear what questions you in the newsroom could ask, and when you want to go more in depth, I would recommend to you to take a look. But basically, there are four. Registration. There are several papers in Europe who use different schemes for registration. You can decide yourself how high the barrier should be. You can, of course, people can use nicknames, but that doesn't mean you don't have to know who they are, so you can take action if people are falling out. Moderation, of course, it's a matter of resources, but it's your choice. You can decide what to accept on your sites. Some people will call you a censor, but others will feel more at home at your site. Think about the long-term strategy here, if you've got a strategy on this. Who are you catering for? Do you want to feel your audience at home at your site? Do you want to interact with your audience, or do you want to interact with everybody? Communication. It's funny, but we are in the communication business, but it's always a problem to communicate inside the newsroom and with our audience. But it's the most basic thing to do. Make clear what your ethics are. Stick to them. Try to stick to them. And be as transparent as possible about it. Put them up for debate with your audience. And when you're linking, if you think it's relevant to link to the hanging of Saddam, make sure that you warn your audience if they're not used to that kind of graphic images. It's so simple. Delegation is also a tool. Your audience can help you to keep up standards. They can police your site, and they can help you to set up a reputation system. So, just 2 words on how we're doing it at Trouw. Most forums on the news stories we moderate actively, and it can mean that some posts are being delayed for several hours, but that's the choice we made, and we moderate before publication. And sometimes we are selective in the topics we want forums on. It can, I'm not sure about other countries outside Europe, but in Europe and especially in Holland, it can be very hectic when you have stories on Islam, or when you have stories on sex, or preferably when you have stories on the relations between Islam and sex. And sometimes it's nice for the traffic, but sometimes it's impossible to moderate. So sometimes you say, sorry, no debate on this one today. It's a choice. You can be punished for it, but some people appreciate it. At the same time, we run verticals with communities on specific topics, and we find it's far more quiet there, because it's not such a, they're not communities on very toxic items, so we can moderate passively, and that works well. So, in conclusion, your old values can be a burden if you don't understand the way people like to use new media. Yes, it's a new game with new rules. You have to expand, and you have to work from there on a day-to-day basis. Old values can, of course, be an asset if you use them with the understanding that new media offer unique possibilities to engage your audiences in the efforts to find the news and to make some sense out of it. So, this is my minimalistic conclusion. Boundaries of journalism can be stretched, but of course, it's up to you. Thank you.